Did you know you could replace just the ABS electronic controller portion of an ABS module without replacing the motor portion or bleeding the brakes on just about any vehicle, even with different numbers? I'm going to show you how to you why it works on just about anything.
In this video today, we're going to show you how to change an ABS pump module controller. The Chevy Equinox Pontiac Torrent Saturn Vue. It works on lots of other vehicles too. The Chevy Equinox a couple months ago, the ABS light was on and had a spongy brake pedal, and I made an exceptional video going through all the things that can cause a spongy brake pedal, ultimately ending up removing the ABS fuse, which took away my spongy brake pedal, which is really strange. When ABS stops working, it's supposed to revert back to manual style air-assisted brakes. I understood it's a loss. It was kind of odd to say we're going to replace the ABS module, only the computer portion on this episode today work, and we're going to go over the things that can happen, what would make you have to replace the whole motor and everything. Great thing about replacing just the ABS controller itself, the electrical portion of it, is don't need any brake bleeding. I would point out that any ABS electrical portion of any ABS module can be changed on just about every vehicle that I found, and I work on a lot of different types of vehicles. Got several videos on different makes and models. You can take the screws out and you can replace just this portion. You won't need to bleed this portion. You'll find with switching these out is sometimes they need a bi-directional scanner to be able to input the VIN into them. This one didn't. It should still work no matter what, even if the VIN's not programmed into it. I use a T20 for the outer screws on the module. Flathead screwdriver. I don't know where the part of that video went. Pop that thing apart. With the screws out, we should be able to lift the component out of there. If we find any brake fluid in any of the solenoids right here, or leaking past any of these, that means we need the whole controller. Fluid should never leak past these solenoids. Every time I have problems with one of these Chevys, I've never had to replace the pump itself or bleed the system. I just replace the electrical portion of the pump. We remove our computer off of there. Now we need to disconnect our battery. I've got a little rhyme for that. Disconnection works on the negative side first, and then installation works in exactly reverse. You connect the positive first to avoid the burst. The 13mm battery hold down bolt removed. Start removing the four 13mm bolts down here. The one 10mm bolt right there. And we need to remove a 10mm nut that's right here, but it looks like Hacky Von Hackenstein has already been here and didn't put it in on mine. We're going to lift the fuse box out of its place. Pull the tabs right here and lift it up around the edges as we do that. Once we get these two tabs up, we can pop it up like this, and most of the time it'll come off. If it doesn't, you do the same over here. Push on these two tabs, and then you'll be able to raise it up and out of the way, and then we'll be able to completely remove our battery bucket, leaving the clips propped like this, and go and work on the back ones, keeping one hand on the fuse box, raising it up as I unclip it. Take your fingers, pinch this so it falls backwards. If the fuse box is giving you trouble, take the tops off, unscrew the 7mm screws right here. This will allow the plugs to come off of the back. As you unscrew these, pull down on the connector on the bottom. Be very careful during reinstallation to not over tighten these bolts. Make sure you don't bend any of the panels that are on the bottom side of the fuse box. They have some clips that are clipped in the back of it or in the sides of this fuse box to remove it. So just use some pliers, pull them off of there. Even with the plugs off of this thing, it's still gonna need some prying and prodding. Do a little man jingle into it. No, but just be gentle with it, get it up out of there, make sure everything's disconnected from the outside of it, and it will come out. As I was removing this, I accidentally cut my hose to my rear washer. Be careful when you're doing that. I recommend pulling the front up forward like this will allow you to easily get it out of your way. How to disconnect the electrical connector to the control module. Okay, so this is what's called a cam lock. As you move this out, this connector is going to lift up. Get it moved back a little bit. You can take a screwdriver, start working it out, and hopefully you can pull it out with your hands at this point as you raise up on the connector here. It's not necessary to disconnect this. You just pull back on this tab, raise it up, pull it out of the way. You even need to get it out of the way. How to take our motor loose, we just take a flathead screwdriver. We're not trying to break this thing, so we just stick it in there because we're going to reuse it. And as you pull out on it a little bit, push down on it and it will come off. Getting the screws out along the edges was nothing real particular. I don't assume I'm gonna have problems with these 5 right here. The only one that I may have some trouble with is where this wiring loom is here, so we're gonna need to cram that thing in there. Probably used to cramming, so it's all good. Since that screw is up underneath that lip, and harness shouldn't be a problem. Okay, so let's say you can't get these screws out because they're rusted or they're stripped. We're gonna go ahead and remove this pedestal right here, and we're gonna break it because you can't break what's already broken. So in this situation, we'll just snap it off of here. Then that'll allow us access to the screws to be able to get the 2 screws out of here that I can't get either one out of. But it works out good for you folks because I get to show you how to do this when it won't work right. This simply has a tab on the back of it and it just lifts right off of there. If you were changing the whole pump, there's 2 13mm nuts down here along the side. You do need to take these nuts off of here. 13mm quickie wrench. The top of these, they're slotted, so you should be able to pull that whole motor out of there. The thing that you need to know, sometimes you start unscrewing these nuts and they don't come off because the bolts start spinning in there. That's okay. You just take a screwdriver, put it in the side of here and pry this away because they just quite simply sit in these pockets on each side of them. Removing the brake lines. Brake lines are 13mm or 1/2 inch. You want to make sure that you use a line wrench because these lines can be really tight. There's 4 here on the top and 2 in the back. If you're only changing the electronic portion, you do not need to touch the brake lines. Another thing that you're going to notice is my box says SA and that says SB. If a car company is manufacturing 100,000 different vehicles, it makes more sense for them to make the most of one thing than it does make 10 different styles of anything else. People often think because they don't understand the way things are put together that they need the exact same numbers for the exact same thing. But if it was taken off of the same style vehicle with the same driveline and the same everything else, all-wheel drive, 3.5, the numbers really won't make a difference because that unit is going to program to that system. If it doesn't work, plug and play. On the line, they cannot make decisions like this. Them people are not that smart. They're just putting parts on that they're told to put on. So that SA could stand for a lot of different things. It could be all-wheel drive, 2-wheel drive, stand for sloppy ass. Who cares though what it stands for? Just as long as it works. I don't really know. Module off of another 06, which doesn't really matter either because they're gonna produce these parts as much or as long as they can along with the components that are inside it. So we're gonna try to install this SA into this SB and I'm pretty sure it's gonna work. And even if it didn't work, and it needed to be programmed, it would have needed to be programmed anyways, so it doesn't really matter in this situation. And if you wanted to change a seat from a car, say your car has manual seats, you want to have a power seat, more than likely that plug for the power seat is down underneath that carpet because it's cheaper for them to manufacture wiring harnesses one way than it is to manufacture wiring harnesses 5 different ways. And that can really add up when you're talking about making 1,000 different parts over 100,000 different cars. You can't be manufacturing them all different ways. So people, because there's some people who question my thought process on this, and I'm like, hey, I've been doing this for 3 decades. I mean, I know what the fuck I'm talking about. When we take this screwdriver, we're gonna wanna put it in between these shafts or over on this edge right here, which our screws are probably gonna block us from doing that. So we'll tap it in right here and pop it off. So pretty much in between these 2 holes here. Bam! With them tabs broken off there, it exposes them pretty well and we should be able to get them right out with some vice grips or maybe even the proper torques. These work just like the valve solenoids in your dryer, if you have a gas dryer. Basically, they open these flutes and they open and close them valves inside there, and they fail just like the ones in your dryers. When you go to install this, move it slowly, try not to wiggle it, and push it straight into place. We don't want to break any of the connections inside there. Just go smooth and rhythmic, putting it on the shafts. That's what she said. Okay, so these connectors are designed to fit into these little holders and clip in. So they'll pretty much sit right there when you go to screw them down. Do not over tighten the bolts. Just work them down with the ratchet and snug them up. If you do over tighten them, you're going to break the connector, and then that's going to cause other problems that you won't be able to remember in the future. Be careful during the reinstallation. Apparently I put a little hole or something and broke the vacuum line right here. I'll have to cut that off and fix it so it doesn't sit there and drip out all of my washer fluid. Personally, I prefer putting the bearing harnesses up in the box, tightening them up by hand instead of putting them back in their holders. Go down to their holders if you tighten them up properly. When I do that, I just turn them down a couple threads until they stop by hand, push it down into place, and then snug it up with my ratchet. I'll take my ratchet and put it in the palm of my hand, and I very gently stop until I can't push it with my fingers anymore. Now I reinsert my fuse and see what it does. Know for certain it fixed the problem that I had, because now I have brakes. With that fuse plugged in before, my brakes would pretty much go down to the floor. Now I've got to fix the ABS sensor that's broken on the front. Okay, so when I bought this vehicle, my old controller said that my wheel bearing was bad and the wires were broken, so I just assumed that the wires were broken, and I tried to repair it today, but I still had a code for my wheel bearing. But this gives me the opportunity to show you folks how to check this. So we're going to set our multimeter to ohms. Doesn't matter if it's which way it's hooked up, ohms or ohms. I've got no reading. I take a new wheel bearing, got resistance. Spin the wheel bearing and make sure that our resistance changes. Most definitely have a defective wheel bearing. Oh, I ordered a new wheel bearing, but me being me, wrong wheel bearing cheaper than the right one. Show you how to fix that and save yourself a couple bucks. Oh, apparently I ordered the wrong wheel bearing, but it fit. Wires were too short. To the junkyard, I got me a wire from another Chevy so it would connect properly, but didn't have the right gap in here, so I took my razor blade and I cut that out. Then I put it together just to make sure it worked. Works just fine. Now, I'm gonna fix up the wire. They don't fall off properly, zip tie it down, whatever's necessary. Y'all dug my video, please allow me to run my mouth for a moment. Name's Clay with the Clay Way here in Muskegon, Grand Rapids, Michigan. And if this video was helpful, please consider subscribing, clicking the notifications, sharing my videos. Give me them sweet old thumbs up. If you've got a question for me and it's about your automobile, not about your baby mama drama, answer them for absolutely free on Clay's AC and Auto Repair on the Facebook Messenger. I don't collect any information. I want to help you keep your whip on the road. Remember, no matter what it is you think you can or cannot do, if anyone else can do it, you can do it too. Don't be the next of them, be the absolute first of you. Life isn't about the legacy you live today, it's about the legacy you leave for tomorrow.